Alrighty, question number 50 says, which type of transformation does not result in a rigid motion? Remember, a rigid motion is a transformation that keeps the same size, and same shape. So those are transformations where the pre-image and image are congruent. Cool. So when we talk about translations, we know that that's a slide. And when we slide something, it's not going to change its side or its shape. So that would be a rigid motion. A rotation is turning something. And when something turns, it does not lose its size or its shape, does not change its size or its shape. A reflection, so flipping something, will not change the size or shape. So those are all three rigid motions, but a dilation, that's going to enlarge or reduce. So that will not be a rigid motion. So that's the one we're looking for there. 51 says, what is the value of x in the trapezoid? Well, in a trapezoid, I know that these same side interiors are going to be supplementary. And we know that supplementary means that they add up to 180 degrees. So the x and the 105 are going to equal 180 degrees. So, oops. And x equals, what is that, 75 degrees. Cool beans. In 52, it says the measure of angle PQR equals 120. So PQR is this big angle. It's the whole thing there, 120 degrees. I know that one of the parts is 9x plus 5 and the other part is 2x plus 5. So this is called the angle addition postulate. But what you just need to know is that the part plus the other part is equal to the whole. So we know that 9x plus 5 plus 2x plus 5 equals 120. So we'll have to combine some like terms. 9x and 2x make 11x, and then the plus 5 and plus 5 would be plus 10. And now I can solve. So minus 10 and 11x equals 110, and lastly divide by 11 and x equals 10. So the answer is not A, because it says what is the measure of angle PQS. So they're trying to trick you there. We got to take that 10 and plug it back in for angle PQS. So angle PQS, the measure of angle PQS is equal to 9x plus 5, and you know that x is 10, so 9 times 10 plus 5, 95. Oops. Cool, so D is the correct answer. Next question. All right, I got a quadrilateral ABCD, and which could be used to prove that ABC is a right angle. All right, so if I'm talking about ABC being a right angle, so this quadrilateral could look like anything, but it says that angle ABC is going to be a right angle. So it might look something like that. So what we would have to know is that AB and BC have to be perpendicular with each other. So I'll write that AB is going to be perpendicular to BC. So we need to know that perpendicular means that they have opposite reciprocal slopes. And opposite reciprocal means we change the sign. So if it was a plus, now it's a minus. If it's minus, now it's a plus. And then reciprocal means flip it. All right. So I've got to find the slope. There's a lot that goes into this question. I've got to find the slopes, and the slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Changing your y's over the change in your x's. So let's look at the slope of AB right here. So we can call this x1, y1, x2, y2. And the slope of AB, so the slope of AB is going to equal, subtract the y values, 5 minus 2, subtract the x values, 3 minus 1, 5 minus 2 is 3, 3 minus 1 is 2. So the slope of AB is equal to 3 halves. All right? So that means if they're going to be perpendicular, then the slope of BC better be the opposite reciprocal of that. So let's test it real quick. The slope of BC, we'll call this x1, y1, and x2, y2. We'll subtract our y's, 3 minus 5. We'll subtract our x's, 6 minus 3. 3 minus 5 is a negative 2. 6 minus 3 is 3. So the slope of that guy is 2/3. So you notice that they have different signs. This guy's a negative and AB has a positive slope. So they have the opposite sign. That's good. And they are reciprocals, because if I flip 3 halves over, it would be 2/3. So they're opposite and they're reciprocal. Check. AB is perpendicular to BC. So let's pick the best answer choice. A says the slope of AB is 2/3. Well, that's not true. B says the slope of AB is 2/3. Again, that's not true. C says the slope of AB is 3 halves. That is true. And the slope of BC is negative 2/3. And they are opposite reciprocals. That is all true. So C is the best answer choice. It was important for us to find the slope because both B and C talked about opposite reciprocals. All right, so C is the best answer. Number 54 says, which property justifies that PR is congruent to PR? So when something is congruent to itself, we call that the reflexive property. And we should put the markings there because we might, if this was a different question where you would need to use the reflexive property, the markings would help you see that that thing is congruent to itself. And 55 says, which of the following lengths of the triangles can be classified as obtuse? So to do this, we'll have to use Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We know that that works for a right triangle. But we said if our C squared was so big that A squared plus B squared isn't enough to equal the C squared is so big that it's bigger than the A squared plus B squared, then that would give us an obtuse. So that's what we're looking for here. So let's test some of these out. Let's test out 8 squared plus 15 squared and see if that's bigger than 17 squared, or if 17 squared is bigger and we have an obtuse triangle. So I just plugged the numbers in my calculator and I got 64 for 8 squared, 15 squared was 225, and 17 squared is 289. When I add these two terms together, I get 289 equals 289. So because it works together just right, I know that that's a right triangle. So that's not going to be the right answer. Let's try B. Let's try 9 squared plus 12 squared equals 14 squared. Alrighty, and I got 81 plus 144, which is 225, and 196. And I know they're not equal, so it's not a right triangle, but the C squared wasn't big enough, so that would be an acute triangle, because the A squared plus B squared was the bigger part. So I'll write that up here. A squared plus B squared, if that's bigger, then your C squared is too small. So that's an acute triangle. All right, up next, let's try the 13 squared plus 14 squared. So 13 squared is 169 plus 196 equals 324. Well, when I put those together, it's 365. So again, we see an A squared plus B squared that's bigger than my C squared. So that's going to be an acute triangle as well. So the answer's got to be D, but let's make sure. 15 squared plus 20 squared equals 26 squared. That's 225 plus 400 equals 676. And that's going to be 625 and 676. All right, this is the one. We can see that the c squared was so big that it was too big for Pythagorean theorem, so it must be an obtuse triangle.